who has grown up to be known and liked by millions, Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is the first nonfiction book ever written in America to sell over 1 million copies. And now here is Dale Carnegie himself.
Good morning, everybody. It is most gratifying to see this large audience here. But I have no doubt as to why you are here. You are not here because you are interested in me. You are here because you are interested in yourself and the solution of your problems. Some of you have come up here saying, I wonder what, if anything, I'll get out of this course in return for the time and money I'll put into it if I decide to take it. Those are perfectly natural questions. In fact, they are inevitable questions, and I want to try and answer them for you. And as part of my answer, I want to tell you how I came to get into this work. When I first started these classes, they were merely courses in public speaking, nothing else. But as the years went by, I discovered that as much as businessmen and women needed training in how to think on their feet, they needed far more training in the fine arts of getting along and dealing with people in their everyday life and work. And remember this, for the past 25 years, I have not been working on a salary. For the past 25 years, businessmen and women have been coming to me and taking these classes not because Papa sent them, not because they needed credits or grades or a degree. They came and took this course on an installment basis. Men and women who hadn't seen the inside of a schoolroom in 30, 40, some 50 years. And they came on the elevated train, and they came in the subway, and they came 30, 45, 100 miles to attend a class. And you can keep them coming under those conditions only if you give them precisely what they want. Something they can use tomorrow to increase their income, to increase their effectiveness in dealing with people in their daily life and work. So when you find a man who's written a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, look at what you're looking at now. A Missouri farmer who made blundering, asinine mistakes himself, and who finally, in confusion and despair, said, are there no rules? What can I do? Where can I turn to for guidance? So I had to be practical. I went down to the public library, and to my astonishment, I could not find a single book written on the subject. But I read a lot of magazine articles. Finally, I hired a trained research man. He worked for 8 hours a day for 18 solid months, reading countless, hundreds of books on psychology. Anything that had the remotest bearing on the subject, how to win friends and influence people. Finally, I said to him, I tell you what I want you to do. I want you to read the biographies of the great men and women of the ages. I am determined to spare no expense in time or money to determine how the great men and women of all ages were able to make friends and influence people. Well, I remember he read 20 biographies of Theodore Roosevelt alone. He read biographies of everyone, from Thomas Edison to Cleopatra. By the way, there's an old girl who knew all the answers. So then I would go back to my classes and I would say, here's what Theodore Roosevelt did. Here's what Ben Franklin did. Here's what Lincoln said, Socrates, Plato. Let's go out and try this in your everyday business and social contacts. And come back next week and tell us about the results. Well, you ought to have seen the enthusiasm. They came to class then with something they wanted to talk about because they had had experiences that were stewing within them They got up and forgot all about the fact that they were making a speech, and so did all the other students. Then, of course, we began to discuss it. One man said, "I've been using that principle for 20 years. Another man said, "I've been doing this or that." So you see, for the past 25 years, I've been working in a human laboratory. A laboratory of human relations nearly every night of the year for 25 years. And the funny part of it is, so far as I know, it is the only laboratory of human relations the world has ever known. I didn't organize it because I'm so smart. We just organized it because it seemed to be the thing to do. We didn't even think about what we were doing. So then we printed a card, and then we printed a larger card, and then some pamphlets, and finally I wrote a book. The summer it was published, How to Win Friends and Influence People, sold 25,000 copies. And in the time since then, it has sold 1 million copies, and my publishers tell me that so far as they know, no other nonfiction book in the history of the publishing business has ever sold so many copies in such a short period of time. Is that because I am so brilliant? No, I wrote other books you never heard of. It is because in this book, we are dealing with a subject that is of vital importance to people. And you who are going to join these classes are going to deal with it. You'll receive a copy of the book, and not only have you got to read it, you've got to digest it, to assimilate it, to talk it, to live it, and come back each week and tell us about the results that you are achieving. So far as I know, it is the only place in the world where training is offered on the subject, how to win friends and influence people. Well, I could go on for an hour or two about these sorts of things, but we're going to have some fun now. We're going to bring up some speakers to talk about classes that they took last year. I've been talking for nearly 40 minutes, and that's longer than anybody ought to talk about anything. So let's get started.